Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about being laid off. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, have you been laid off multiple times in the corporate world? And how did you deal with each occurrence? Yes, I have. I have been laid off more than once. I think I've been, well, I have, it depends on how you look at it. My first job I didn't get laid off, but they would not continue my contract. Luckily for me, I already had another employment before I learned that that was the situation. And so the uh, the thing that I learned was that uh, it affects me as very personally when the circumstances for being laid off are something related to how good I am at my job. Because for me, one of the worst ideas I've ever had, when especially growing up and things like that, I've always been the sort of person who, like, if I put my mind to something, I really want it to succeed, and then I will, I will walk for fire to make whatever goal I have happen. And so the worst idea for me is to feel as if, well, you're not good enough to do this thing. You're just not able to, or things like that, to feel limited by my own skills or my own drive or something like that. That's something that has always been a very, well, it's a hard feeling for me to deal with. And so as I found that as long as I don't have that looming over me, it's easier for me to deal with being laid off and so forth. And then there are situations where I don't really care at all. So in the first situation, at my first job, it was due to performance reasons, and I knew that, like, I had been suffering for a very long time within that environment because I simply did not have the skills to survive in that specific company, and they did not have the, let's just not blame people, because I don't think that that makes any sense. Like, let's just say that they didn't have the circumstances to support me in the way that I needed. Let's call it that. And so that felt pretty horrible for me. Like, I've had low self-esteem and all of this good stuff that you get, especially in the early days. And then the second time it happened, it had to do with that they shut down the office, and then I bounced back like that. And the reason was because it had no longer anything to do with my personal performance or anything like that. It had to do with economy reasons, or, like, it's just business type of deal, right? And so that I found it easy to deal with. And the reason why I've had this easier time to bounce back is because of that thing that I keep telling you guys about, that is so important, and that is to never lose your market value. Know what your market value is and make sure that it is as high as you can make it at all times. Because if something unforeseen happens, it doesn't really matter if it's because of performance reasons or if it's because business or economy things or so forth. If you have your market value, you don't lose your value. That's the thing, right? And so in my first job, I didn't really know what my market value was. In the second job, I had some confirmation at the very least that, well, I had been able to get 2 software developer jobs now, so at least I have some value, right? And then of course when I get my third job, I feel even more strengthened in my idea that, well, I'm probably not as horrible as I might have thought when I was at my first job. And then when it happened, again, because I've been through a few of these journeys before, it was the same sort of deal, right? And so now in my recent times, when I've either, it doesn't matter if I've been fired or been laid off, or if I quit the job or taken another position or so forth, the thing that I came to realize was that usually there are more circumstances than it's just Frederick, or like it's just me who I can't perform, because now I've been through enough jobs and had enough peer reviews, and, like, I've been doing really, really well in one company and not so well in another company and so forth. So I've started reflecting a little bit about the circumstances as to why I've failed in the past, what things can have been, and that's, of course, always a difficult thing to do, because you have to be honest with yourself, brutally in some cases and so forth. And sometimes you have to cut yourself a bit of slack, and sort of try to balance those things out. But the thing that the red thread I saw through all of it was that I do poorly when I feel as if I am not good enough, and I do fairly well when it's just, it is what it is. It's nothing I can do about it. It's just basically to do the thing I've said to you guys. keep the market value and then get on the next horse, like just start looking for the next thing. It's not something personal for me. A lot of people feel, some type of attachment to their places of work and so forth, and I usually don't work that way. I feel attachment to specific people, but I would never be the sort of person who's gonna go and like just stick with a company who treats me poorly or so forth and so forth, just because I have some type of loyalty to the company and so forth. I am loyal to anybody I work with, and I do my best for in every situation. But it's not like if they have to fire me that I feel like this is the end for me, because they're a company. Like, it's a company, and I understand the rules of my employment, or usually I'd like to think that I do at the very least. So I don't take these things personally. And now, when I've been around the block enough to realize that my performance has not only been, it's been raised from being, say, a very low performer to being a decent performer to now being in the top tier, depending on how you look at it, of course. But usually I find myself working with within the more senior roles, or like the sort of roles where most more experienced software developers are working. I don't really have this idea anymore that the problem is that I can't perform. It's usually other things that that are underlying as to why I might get laid off or something like that, or I get fired because of something. And most of the time it is the good old classic chemistry between me and some other person, and getting complaints about this or that and so forth. And that's another story entirely, like how that works and so forth. I've found some observations as well. The one I can give you for free is that usually I do really well with the my chemistry, my personal chemistry works really, really well with people who, as I like to call them, they have fire in their eyes, like they're hungry and they actually want to do things and they're engaged and they care about their work and all this stuff. And people who are either extremely talented or have a very high level of skill or something like that. I usually don't do well at all with the people, the bitter old seniors or the lone wolf types, or the opinionated people who, they don't really care about anything. They have a really poor attitude towards work, and if you ask them to do something, it might happen, and if you ask them, if you try to make something happen, they're gonna block you if it's not a tool or a thing that they like, or things like. They don't have any idea, like they don't really care so much about what's good for everybody. They care about their own personal situation more than anything else. These people, I hate their guts, and I can't stand them. And usually, what happens is that we get into a friction situation, and that's a whole different video how you deal with that sort of stuff. But the thing that is important to understand here is that even though I know that I might get laid off for a reason like that, that in of itself has no longer is no longer something that affects me negatively, because even if it feels bad for me that I'm not able to be the people pleaser that I like to be, uh, I know that in my next job I might have a better person that I'm working with, or other people. Like, the circumstances are all, like, it has nothing to do with my skill, if that makes sense. It has to do with other factors, and that feels very comforting to me, because my skills as a software developer are the thing that usually I can draw upon as personal strength. So if you take that away from me, that's when I feel at my most vulnerable. So what I want you to take away from this is that, yes, I've been laid off multiple times, many, many times. I've only like, when I moved from one company to another, like the first 3 jobs or something like that was like basically either being laid off or being fired or something like that, for various reasons. We don't have to get into all of that. But the thing that I can tell you is that the way that I dealt with it, it improved for every time it happened. That's sort of the thing I've been saying to you guys. At least what I believe is that exposure makes things easier, usually. Not always, because every situation is usually a little bit unique, but at least you can get some the red thread. You can make some observations about how you behave and why things happen, or, like, as I like to call it, pattern matching and things like that. And the thing that I learned about myself at the very least was that if I get laid off, I'm not really worried about getting another job usually, because I know that my value as a software developer doesn't go away. It's not like I lose all my skills. That's why I tell people, if you're nervous for losing your job, and you don't know if you're going to get another one, then you probably need to get some confidence in your skills, or like your market value and things like that. And I have invested in that enough that I know that, yeah, it might suck, I might not get my favorite, like another job for a while, or so forth and so forth, but it's not like I don't have the skills to be a software developer. I usually have. And so that is something that gives me comfort. If it's due to personal reasons, my people pleaser side kicks in, and I really hate myself for, yeah, why couldn't I make this work? Why do I always have to, I don't know, have an opinion about something other people don't like, etc., etc., etc. And that's a little bit tougher to deal with, but at the very least I can draw some strength from the idea that, well, I know that I always do my best. I also know that usually I have a good idea, or like it's not like I'm gonna force people to do something that isn't really a good idea. I'm not that strong, not that sort of bully type of person. I like to think at the very least, and I usually have a perspective that is focused on, let's try to do the thing that is best for the company or the group or so forth. And so if these ideas are not vibing with the people that I'm working with, it's probably not just me who is the reason why this happened. It's probably something more advanced than that. Classic one is the person in power who doesn't like me makes my life a living hell, and then I have to go out, not because I'm a bad software developer, I'm not a good person to have in a company, but because that individual in the people that have the power, or who are complaining to the right people, who have the ear of managers and so forth, they simply don't like me. And I've learned the hard way that, unfortunately, I'm not the sort of person who's going to be liked by everybody. And there's not much I can do about that without compromising my entire identity. And that is a line that I will not cross. Have a great day.